Background is in operations. I spent 35 years in the operations space. The last 25, I led the facilities operations group at Harvard University. There's about 1,000 employees and contractors, and 25 million square feet of space. We ran our own utilities, generated power, generated chill water, steam, so forth. We had 5 miles of roadways and open spaces. We had 600 plus buildings, so it was a lot of place, a lot of space, a lot of people to take care of. And one of the things is we went mobile with all of that operation. And in that, I learned a lot of lessons about mobility and going mobile and the value of it. I wanted to share some of those with you because now in my new role, I work with companies who also have gone mobile or are contemplating going mobile. And the biggest issue they struggle with is user adoption. They deploy something and they can't get the guys to use it. They can't get everyone to use it. And I'm going to talk about that and how to address it. So I'm going to start with what is the value of mobility? Why do we use mobile tools in the operations and maintenance space? And then what is fundamental to all of this is how to manage change. Because this is at its core a change management challenge. Then there's 5 things that I have distilled down from talking and learning with dozens and dozens of customers who have gone through this and different organizations about how to actually get full user adoption. And I'm going to share those with you. So just to start, I'm going the wrong way. It's this one. Okay, so mobility. Why is it important in the operations and maintenance space? What are the real value propositions? They all revolve around time. Being able to save time in your labor force, being able to save time, which translates into reduced overhead, being able to save time in decision making, making better decisions throughout your organizational calendar. And all of these values compound one another, because every time you save time, you've opened up an opportunity to do something else with it. So if you save time doing this, filling out a piece of paper or making a report or giving someone an update, you've now liberated that time to do something else with it. So it is a continually compounding set of values. Let me focus on one, and that's labor, because this one is often where we start. Get a lot of labor efficiency, and there are different ways to value labor. And many times folks will look at labor and say, what's the cost per hour for that labor? And I'll translate it into a dollar value. We'll save X number of dollars a year by saving that time. But there's another way to look at it, and that is when you're in the operations space, you just never have enough resources. You never have enough. I listened to the last presenter, did an excellent job talking about the plan, and then how you have to constantly adjust the plan because you never have enough resources to meet the plan. Things come up that you don't expect, and that is the day-to-day real life of operations and maintenance. So when you look at 10 minutes, rather than looking at it in dollars, you can translate it into time. And across a 250-person workforce, if you're able to save 10 minutes a day for each employee, that translates to 2% of their daily time, which is like having 5 additional employees in your workforce. Think about the end of any day, what you would do if you had 5 more guys to have worked that day. How much more work would you have gotten done? How many more things would have come off that list? How many fewer things would be backlogged? That's just saving 10 minutes a day. Now, if you take a lot of experience that we have is with work order closeout process, just as one example. Many times that involves filling out some paper, what you did, how much time you spent, where you did it, and then taking that paper and moving it somewhere to someone who is then going to input it into something. Well, that cycle might be 10 minutes of your time just to do that. Now, if you're doing that multiple times in a day, and this is just one example, let's say you're doing that 5 times a day because you've got 5 work orders you're closing out. Now you're saving 10% of your daily time. That's translating into 25 more employees across that 250-person workforce. And that's every day. And those 25 employees are not new employees that you need to train. Those 25 employees are your guys. They're trained, they're skilled, they know the place, they know the job. So the value of those guys is much higher than it is taking 25 guys off the street. So this is really just one way to look at return on investment when you consider mobility. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes because it's so true, and we all experience it. We all love progress. Many of us really resist or dislike the change. And that's really at the core of this. You know, the last series of questions were about, what did you do with the guys? How'd you train them? Where'd you spend the time? And that is, again, where the real rubber meets the road. So you've got to penetrate this human sensibility across your workforce if you want to be successful. So there's really a few examples here that really distill down into 5 kind of broad steps, and I'll go through them. Is where you're starting, what do your people really think about? What are the things you can control as the and I'm speaking here as the management coordinating team here. Having a plan and then tracking that plan. You heard a lot about that, very similar to what you heard about in the last session with regard to those points. But let's look at this. Your starting point. Some folks have never gone mobile before. So those are the folks we put in this first launch. You don't have any history with mobility. You're a paper-based operation, and you're starting from there. The others are in what we call recovery mode. You went mobile, but it's suboptimal for whatever reason. But figuring out what those reasons are. Why do I only have 30% user adoption or 80% user adoption when I want 100? Why is that? So figuring out, so first you have to know where you're starting because that's going to change your strategy. But this, and it was also going to change the answers to these questions. Your user realities really are at the core. What does the workforce understand? How have these questions been answered for them? Why are we doing this? Why are we changing anything? You may know that, and you may think everyone else knows that. Don't assume that. Don't assume that that answer has been universalized. You need to provide it and reinforce it. Second is, how does it benefit me in my job? Okay, it's great. Company's going to be more, how does it benefit me? The electrician, the guy who's turning a wrench every day. How does it help me? And then what happens if I don't do it? I'm not crazy about the change thing. What happens? What's really going to happen? What are the consequences for what we call non-compliance? You need to provide answers to those questions. Those questions need to be fully resolved in the minds of your workforce if you're going to be successful with any kind of serious change management effort. This is also the reality. Again, the last speaker talked about you make a plan, but the plan always changes. Mike Tyson famously said, every guy I ever fought came in the ring with a plan. And that plan changed when he got punched in the face. Right? So that's the reality. The plans always change, and there are things that you don't expect that you're going to encounter. And this is what we refer to as the valley of despair, because this is when a workforce, a team, an organization can start to say, why the hell are we doing this anyway? This is a lot of work. You know, it was fine the way it was. And this is really where projects can get into a real rut. Pointing this out to everyone who's on the team up front is really valuable. Say, folks, we're going to see it. We're going to reach a point. I don't know exactly when it's going to be, but there's going to be a point in this project, this 9-month, 1 year, however long it is, where we're going to be questioning ourselves. We're going to be looking at the challenges. They got bigger, they changed, and we're going to say, why are we doing this? Let people know it's there, because we're going to see it, and then we're going to choose not to stay there. And that's a real key, is that you don't have to stay in that valley. And when you talk to an organization like this, and you explain it, and I've had this experience myself many times, you see people recognize that, yeah, I guess that's life. Yeah, we are gonna have some rough spots. But if we know the rough spots are coming, we don't know where they are, but we know we're gonna work through it as a team and get through them. It's a very important consideration. Now, this idea that success leaves clues, when you get into your mobile solution, your plan of what you're going to deliver, there are really some components here that you should always think about. The first is this idea of device selection. Now, organizations have all different reasons, and I'm not going to weigh in on which way you should go on this, whether you should have a bring your own device or you should issue devices, whether those devices should be iOS or Android or Windows. All of those are decisions that an individual organization is going to be better off making. If they want some help and say, what's your experience? Sure. But there's going to be things. But the one thing, if you're able to allow people to choose the form factor of the device, that I've found is a real key issue. Many times, the IT department, and apologize to anyone who's from IT, will make the decision of we're going to do this. We're going to use these devices, and we're going to deploy them, and everyone's going to use them. And they never talk to the guys who actually have to carry the devices. And many times it doesn't matter to the IT department whether or not it's a tablet or a phone or whatever. They don't really care, maybe they do, but in many cases they really don't. And my example has always been, let the guys choose which form factor they want to carry. I've talked to guys who say, I don't want to carry that tablet around. I'm a plumber, I got a whole tool belt full of shit, I got a bag, I don't want to carry that thing around. Can't I just use a phone? I need a phone anyway. Can I just put it on the phone? Perfect. Other guys say, hey, I need the real estate of a bigger device. I don't mind carrying it. That's my preference. Fine. So my point is, if you can let them choose, let them choose. If it's no skin off your teeth, whether they use which size device. The other thing, though, is to have a device policy, a mobile device policy. Your company, your organization should always have this. This is what creates the expectations. And again, like the plan that you heard in the last conversation, it gives you something to go back to when something happens. And that device policy should have enough flexibility in it to accommodate changes in technology that happen that you can't anticipate. So one thing is to have that policy reference some other document that the IT group keeps up to date on latest technology, so forth. That way this remains evergreen. It references back to that. That thing changes. These are principles that are going to stay the same. You're creating that framework and you're creating the expectations for the organization. It's another way also to embrace and put up scaffolding for why you're actually doing a mobility project. The simplicity of the UI design, again, you'll work with your own vendor around this, but simple is always better. And this idea of pull downs versus free-form text, don't make people write things where the response pattern 80% of the time is one of these three things. You know from operations experience how many times on break-fix work, there's only a certain range of responses that guys are going to use most of the time. It's either this, or it's this. Now, if it's something else, have them write it down. But if this, or this represents 80 or 90% of the use cases, just give it to them in a pull down. Don't make them write it out. It's going to make your reporting easier. It's going to make everything more consistent. And it's going to make it a lot easier for the user to want to use this when he's just clicking that button of the familiar. Also, you can use these guided workflows, so you don't have to ask the guy to change the status on the work order. If you know when this gets assigned, he picks this response, that's automatically going to change. Don't make him go through these extra steps. And having it just guide through, like this example shows, is a really simple way to do it. Now, if there is a magic bullet, if there is secret sauce, if there is anything about this session you take away and remember, it's going to be this. Work process redesign, when it comes to mobility, is the absolute king of the hill. If you don't spend the time and redesign your work process to support mobility, you are unlikely to achieve optimal success. And this really starts with mapping out how you do it now. The current state has to be clearly and well understood before you go off and redesign the new work process with mobility. And this is a step that I find organizations are often want a shortcut. They're a little reluctant to spend this extra time. And it is like what was talked about in the last session with the guys in the field who have all the knowledge. This current state work process has to be mapped with people who are true subject matter experts. I really don't want the IT guys in this conversation except to listen. I'm not asking them how it works. I want the supervisors, I want the administrative assistants, I want the people who are doing this work every day who know, yeah, this is the way we do it most of the time. Oh, yeah, except on, yeah, the last day of the month we have a different procedure. Yeah, and then when Jim calls, it's yeah, I want all that. because that's really where you're going to be able to capture and pinpoint all of the opportunities for change. It's all of that little stuff that you have to, this map, you can't really read it, but everything where it says M is a manual process. Those are all manual. And where you've got those icons of printer and paper and scanners and telephones and people walking, that's all physical movement. So just as an example, to do this, you have to have some skill. You have to have someone who can run that workshop effectively, that knows the questions to ask, and knows what, when unsaid, needs to be examined. Because many times you'll say, is there anything else? Folks say no. And then if you don't know what the next question to ask is, you'll think, well, they told us everything. Well, they told you everything except. Because they're not even thinking of it because it's chronic for them. So this is where you eliminate the leaks in the work process. Once you've got the current state, then you redesign the future state to eliminate all of those leaks, all of those manual processes, and you make it where the mobile option is the only option. To do that is a lot of work because you've got to refine that process, you've got to talk to a lot of people and get a lot of fingerprints on it, but that is the most important piece. That forms the basis for your action plan. These redesign work processes, you engage your critical stakeholders. These are the folks and again, the champion of your project, a successful project, I believe, really needs to be led by the operations groups. If it's led by IT, if the energy source, if you will, is the IT department, they're the ones who want this, they think it's a good idea, they want this change, that's just not enough usually to carry the day. You need the operations groups to be fully invested, the leadership of those groups. That is often where we see there's a critical disconnect between success, optimization, and failure is at the operations. So you've got to have those critical stakeholder engagements and those what we call champions for change. Now the champions for change can be all through the organization. They don't have to be the leaders. They can be the guys in the group who like the tech. They can be the guys in the group who like to teach. They can be the guys in the group who say, hey, I think this is really cool. So the champions for change can be developed throughout the organization, but those critical stakeholders need to be in the leadership. Having testing goals and plans and having a communication strategy that is one of no surprises. Regular timed updates of how we're doing, what we're doing, why we're doing it, those start every time, and how we're doing. Right? Anything that we're changing. Communicate that to the whole workforce. I've been through this before, and it is really important to have those communications going out and have them being reinforced. They can be simple, they can be short, but they have to be consistent. You do not want an organization that says, I don't know what happened to that thing. They were talking about it back in the spring, and I don't know, I haven't heard anything. I don't know. You don't want the great unveiling where people come in and say, oh, wait, what's all this? You really want to set it up so that everything is coming in consistent, small waves of information, and it's all based on the same overriding objective. When you get to the testing strategies, it's the same idea. This idea of concentric circles, if you will. You start with that trusted, most engaged staff, and you train them. And you have exposed them throughout. And you smuggle in the training to everyone else. So if you start with a group of 6 or 7 guys, and those are your core guys that you're beta testing everything with, and they're really engaged, and they get to the point where you know it works, you start bringing in 20 more guys. And you have them test the same thing that you already know works. And then you bring in 50 more guys, and you're bringing in for 20-minute, 30-minute testing session. Hey, you've been named as a tester. Can you come in and test this? I already know it works. We all know it works. I want him to see it and be part of it, get his fingerprints on. He was a tester before it went live. You keep doing this. Now, you will learn things. You'll keep refining things as you go. But you're also smuggling in the training because every time you came in to test, you had to learn something in order to test it. So you got to feel what it's like. And you're also beta testing the messaging all the time. You're always talking to people, and you should be kind of testing what resonates with people. When I phrase it this way versus when I phrase it that way, this is what they're taking away from it. That's what you want to keep refining. But this will all help in the final adjustments and refinements of what you're going to deliver. But by the time you get to actual training, you should have exposed a huge portion of the workforce to this tool. These guys, at training, they're not seeing it for the first time. Maybe 10 or 20% of the guys are seeing it for the first time. The rest have already been part of something, they got a half an hour, they got some exposure to it. So again, it shouldn't all be new. Having a plan and then having the ability to track the plan is also super important. So when you're transitioning, if you do a transition from paper to mobile, you really want to be able to track where your transactions are coming from in your data set. So are they coming from desktop use or are they coming from mobile use? And there are easy ways to do that, set up a tracking system like this so you can see what's effective as you roll it out to each group, as you, whatever your plan is. If you have a plan of rolling it out in pilot phases, you can see what's working, what's not, and you can continuously refine. So just to summarize in 5 steps. First is you have to understand your organization and most importantly your user realities around this change. You don't have to be victimized by whatever past failures your organization may have had. It's just experience in the end. It didn't go well, whatever, this is what we learned. Own it, present it, and you're gonna find that everyone's gonna say, okay, yeah, we learned from that. We didn't get it right the first time, that's why we're redoing it. Third point is this key that I mentioned around the leak-proof work processes. If you don't have those, your chances of real success are gonna be low. And getting a lot of people involved, again, through those concentric circles, you get a lot of people involved in the plan and in the action plan. And finally, if you're not measuring your progress, if you're not measuring your activity, it's gonna be really hard to manage any of it. So that key is you've gotta have some sort of measurement system set up and active throughout. So just to wrap up, mobility always pays. Adding mobility to your work operations is a huge ROI no matter what. No one's ever gone mobile and then gone back to paper. It's a one-way street. And this challenge of change management is one that when you understand the fundamentals of it, you're gonna have a bigger head start on engaging folks and actually making that change effective. And there is no reason not to plan for full user adoption. You really should make the plan and set that as the goal, that it's gonna be 100% user adoption. This is the way we're going to do things. That puts a lot of clarity into the mission, and it also is the only way to actually get full user adoption, because if you don't plan for it, you're probably never gonna get there, right? So that's, those are really the 3 keys. I went quickly because I know we're up against a lunch break in just a few minutes, and I didn't wanna keep you here any longer than we needed to, but we do have a few minutes for questions.
Is your perspective around a single software platform or multiple, and how would multiple play into the effectiveness?
Single in regard to the workforce, just using one, or
using one application or multiple applications?
Well, I mean, typically the experience has been that most organizations use one. I have encountered organizations use 4 different EAM or enterprise asset management systems simultaneously. All of those challenges can be overcome, but typically organizations land on one enterprise asset management system and then mobilize from that. But I had an experience where organization changed enterprise asset management systems because they wanted a better mobile tool. And when you really look across the EAM space, if you have the choice, there's really only 3 or 4 big players at the enterprise scale. And I'm of the, you choose the mobile solution first and you back into the EAM since they're not that different. But many times organizations don't have that opportunity because they're already an Oracle shop or a Maximo shop or whatever it is. So, but it can work both ways. Sure.
So we have recently launched a Maximo mobile version, and we're running into a lot of the challenges that you mentioned. So one of the challenges, and we paid a lot of attention to the user interface of the mobile app, and on the flip side, that ended up losing some of the functionalities that's available from the desktop version, like seeing what's on the schedule for the rest of the next week and the following week. So that's some of the feedback that we're getting from the field technicians, and there's statements that said, oh, I like to do it at the end of the day when I can, provide a detailed log notes rather than doing it with my thumbs. So what are some of the answers that you recommend to those kind of, I see both sides.
Well, I think first you do have to pick a good mobile solution. And you mentioned one, and it's probably not a premier solution right now. So you got to pick a good mobile solution, because if you have the right mobile solution and then you set up you can take advantage of things like voice to text, right? So it's like, well, I don't really want anyone using their thumbs, typing in updates of what they did for work. Again, if I've constructed those pull downs properly, and maybe if there's a long range, I've sequenced pull downs of, if you answer this one this way, it's conditional, it gives you a different set of responses to go to the second tier, third tier, like that. So I can stack those responses in a work log at the end of the day that look like this to this to this. Is a very logical progression with what was performed. And then voice to text is another option. But the first is you got to pick a good mobile solution. That certainly is at the heart of it. But all the rest of it can be overcome, I think, with some thoughtfulness and also really finding out. I mean, this is where the operations team is so important, and where looking at your own history is so important, because when you look at all of those work logs and you filter through what I refer to as the pleases and the thank yous, and there's a lot of extra words in there. When you get to the essence of what it is, you can start to say, okay, well, there's really just 6 different response patterns we have here, right? And then you can distill those into language that makes sense and that resonates with the workforce, where they feel like that work update is complete. That is not just, I did it. Well, that doesn't feel like very complete, so you do have to develop that, but that's all in the workshop, kind of phase of development. And you keep the options open to be able to adjust as you need, but that's it's definitely a good challenge to have, Other questions? Is anybody else not mobile currently in their operations? Are you still, yeah? Okay. What kind of business is it what kind of operation do you have? What is it? Automotive. Yeah, there's obviously, is it repair facilities or manufacturing? Yeah. So we've got experience with that. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for, mobile operations and manufacturing. What do others have? Anything else? I'm getting the high sign to wrap it up for the hungry. Okay, well, I'll be downstairs at my group, Interpro Solutions. We'll be downstairs, so thank you.